compatibility, and mutual recognition of higher education and training systems. It encompasses qualification attained among the EAC partner states, which are based on shared views on quality, criteria, standard, and learning outcome for promoting student and labor mobility in the region. So it is my expectation that the Aheri series of conferences will continue to contribute to the achievement of the common higher education area in our region. Ladies and gentlemen, as convener of this conference, I have confidence to assure you all that the conference will bring a perspective from regional and international level in the understanding local solution to solve global challenge through knowledge diplomacy, which refers to the role of higher education, research, and innovation in building and strengthening relations between and among countries. Participants of various key stakeholders in this conference, such as academicians, public officials, diplomats, and captains of industry, demonstrate the EAC commitment to public-private partnership to support innovation. Also, looking at the outcome of this meeting, it gives us confidence as EABC that we will be able to attain the expected outcome of the conference. But also we need to go higher mile to try to address some of the dilemma which actually are related to the innovation. You find, for example, in the region, youth are very innovative, but they lack financial capital to advance their innovation. So it is better also to look how we can make sure that our youth, when they come up with their innovation, we back them, we support them to make their innovation reality by giving them capital or financial support so they can realize what they are dreaming. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude my remarks, I would like to say, as a community, we stand proud that EAC is the fastest integration regional bloc in the Africa continent. This is due, among other factors, to the important role played by private sector in the area of trade and investment. However, it is high time the private sector in the region played more active role in the innovation and research with the intention of finding a local solution to our ever-increasing challenges. I wish you all fruitful deliberations. Asanteni sana.
Thank you for those remarks. To transition into the next phase, I'll invite Dr. Edna Makule to join us on the panel and hand over to our ICT director, who is the moderator, Barak Otieno, to take us through the first panel discussion.
Thank you very much, Director. Before you sit down, I request for a photo moment up on the stage. And a round of applause for this panel. Let's give them a clap. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. That is the moderator's photo. There will be more outside. I didn't want to lose this opportunity. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again. And we are doing really well on time. And Karibu, Dr. Edna. Karibu, Professor. We also have Dr. Kevit Desai, who is joining us online. Thank you, Dr. Kevit. I see you are ready. This meeting is being broadcast live on the Association of Africa University TV, and I want to take this opportunity to thank them for ensuring that we reach the entire African continent and the world. So prepare your comments really well. As you speak, know you are speaking to the rest of the world, or you are giving ideas to the rest of the world. Again, I would like to take this opportunity before we start to thank the East African community. The Secretary General is not available to join us today because of exigencies of duty, but nonetheless, they have provided this wonderful facility for us to be able to have an important conversation on higher education in the region. And I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, we are just starting. Ndio tunaanza in Kiswahili. Let me look for my French dictionary, and then I will say it in French as well, because the translators are not yet here. As we came in the morning, I was listening into a very interesting conversation by Professor Chacha here, who has seen it all and is still seeing it all, on the evolution of the East African and basically the African continent at large. I think sometimes we take for granted some of the things that we see. I never knew who built this facility that we are seeing, the East African community. But thankfully, being close to him, I got a bit of history on how this building came to be. And there are many structures that we are enjoying within the East African region, which have been built by friends of East Africa, friends of Africa, institutions of knowledge which have also been built. But I think, as our previous speaker from the East African Business Council has mentioned, there may have been limited involvement by East Africans in the process, hence a little appreciation of the facilities that we do have. So for this and many others, we are going to have very interesting conversations to know what resources do we have in the region. Yeah. Insofar as the higher education ecosystem is concerned, what are some of the policy frameworks that we have in the region? Insofar as the higher education ecosystem is concerned, what are some of the governance frameworks that are driving the higher education ecosystem in the region? Because as we talk about higher education, it's not just about the output. A lot goes on in ensuring that there is input that contributes to the output, whether we are talking about technical and vocational institutions, whether we are talking about universities or higher level institutions. And that's why we are here. So I would like to request you to free up or loosen up. And we really want to have an open conversation for those who are online and even those who are offline. May I also remind us that we are live on Twitter, we are live on Facebook, we are live on YouTube. So feel free to air your comments on all those channels, and they'll definitely be captured on the floor. May I also inform us that we have a remote moderator on Zoom. So for those who are joining us on Zoom from different parts of the world, please also feel free to bring forth your sentiments on the floor, and they shall be taken into consideration. So without further ado, I want to get back to the program and proceed from there. And To start us off this morning, I would like to give Professor Chacha the floor to share his reflections on the policy frameworks and governance structures that are driving the higher education ecosystem within the East African region and beyond. Let's remember that this conversation is not just about the East African region, but it's about the African region at large. Professor Chacha, I have many questions for you, but I don't want to run ahead of myself. You have been around for long. You have seen from the very beginning when the first building blocks were set up. And you are still here with us. We are now in a new decade. And I'm very keen to find out how and where we will be at 2030. But I'm sure from where you sit, you can be able to see some things which I'm unable to see. In fact, we have an African saying which says that a young man like me cannot see further than where an old man like you can see sitting under a tree. So I'm imagining that I'm on top of the tree and you're already under it, and I'm sure you can see things that I cannot be able to see, which you have already seen from the past. Professor, welcome.
Thank you very much, Bwana Moderator. I think the issues at hand here are for us to appreciate the journey that higher education has gone through in relation to the community engagement. And I think when you look back, you will realize that this journey has not been very smooth. It has been tough. The higher education institutions were established during the colonial period. At that time, as I earlier said, I think the focus on creating very few highly educated individuals who would be provisional commissioners, etc., who will be permanent secretaries. But as far as the common man was concerned in the continent of Africa, I think people were not concerned about them per se in relation to what the higher education systems were built to undertake. In East Africa, for example, we started our higher education journey with the University of London, where some of the East Africans were training, principally learning at Makerere College that time, but getting degrees from the University of London. And then later on, Makerere College mutated into the University of East Africa for the East African countries and a few Central African countries. So in the initial early years, in the 60s, for example, Makerere, you would find people from Zambia, people from Zimbabwe, people from Malawi, Zanzibar, Tanganyika, Kenya, and Tanzania then, Kenya and Uganda. And I'm sure it was a glorious period during that time because every person in East Africa, in the villages, would be wondering if you claim to be highly educated, they will ask you, have you been to Makerere? Are you a student of Makerere? So Makerere was our reference point. But in 1970, just as the East African community was maturing, the earlier one, which had been signed in 1967 by President Jomo Kenyatta and President Nyerere and President Obote, as it was maturing in 1970, we had a break of that arrangement of the University of East Africa, and each country got their own fully fledged universities. So Makerere became the university in Uganda, Makerere University, and the University College Dar es Salaam became the University of Dar es Salaam, and the Royal Technical College, which was the University College of Nairobi, became a fully fledged University of Nairobi. And the three countries, therefore, could now pause and say that each one of them had a higher education institution which would be recognized worldwide as a university, offering more or less the same programs that you could get in other universities, although the capacity to offer those programs was very low in terms of our human resource capital as well as resources. But that is the journey. And for East Africa, it was a good journey because just before independence also, we had established the Inter-University Council, which was responsible for ensuring, for example, how these institutions could share capacity. So those glorious days, all lawyers in East Africa were trained in the University of Dar es Salaam, because that was the only university in the region where you had the Faculty of Law training lawyers. And all engineers were trained in the University of Nairobi, engineers and architects and veterinary meds. And all medical doctors and social scientists and educationists were trained in Makerere. Then Dar es Salaam also established a very powerful system of teaching people statistics and the social science, the applied social science, so political science, etc., etc. And I think some of us then joined the university around that time, and we were beneficiaries of the greatest era of the East African community. So sitting here in the East African building for me is very nostalgic, because it reminds me of how we have transformed our togetherness, sometimes with challenges. You recall that in 1977, the first East African community broke down, and then it had to be revived in the late 90s, culminating in the treaty that was signed in 1999 to reestablish this East African community, which we are now enjoying the fruits of. But during that time, I wish also to share with the audience that I was honored to be one of the individuals who were given the opportunity to serve one of the institutions which was being revitalized, the Inter-University Council for East Africa. So as far as the university journey in the region is concerned, I think all the issues we are talking about, including the establishment of the East African higher education area, that was part of my legacy. That was part of some of the things that I engaged in together with very many leaders of higher education in East Africa, vice chancellors of universities of Dar es Salaam, Zumbe, SUA, Open University in Tanzania, Makerere, Chambogo, yeah, and many others in Kenya, University of Nairobi, Kenyatta, Jomo Kenyatta. That time we had fewer universities which were public. But I also, during the tenure, I served as the executive secretary of the Inter-University Council for East Africa. I think I witnessed the exponential growth of university education in the region. And I think that is the issue that brings on board some of the agenda that we are discussing now. That with all this expansion, how does higher education interface with the common person in the villages, with the people in the streets of our urban centers, with everybody, so that people can grow in the region with the hope that having these university education systems is actually a good thing to do, not just an elitist mentality that was there during the colonial time, where people who were educated in university education perhaps were not being educated to take care of the common interests and to take care of the social justice for people. Because I think outside here, even as we sit in this big hall at the East African Community headquarters, we meet people who are looking for justice. We meet people who are perhaps just trying to ache their lives because life is very difficult. So we need to ask ourselves, how does the university system, in all the programs that we have established, try to interface with the challenges that the common man is facing, and how can we help in creating and finding solutions that can help these people to live a comfortable life. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Amazing reflection of the higher education journey in East Africa. I still have many more questions, and I know the audience also has as many questions as much. And I think I will come back to you later on. I know also Dr. Edna seems to have very interesting reflections. But first we'll go to Dr. Kevit Desai, whom I can see is ready. And Dr. Kevit, if you can hear us very well.
Yes, I can. Thank you.
What are your reflections on the policy and governance framework that is driving the higher education ecosystem in the East African region, and by extension, probably the African region? I would like us to reflect on a larger continental scale. Do you think the policy framework is addressing the pressing needs, or do you think we need to put in more effort in building the policy and governance framework and also ensuring that it's actually working? Over to you, Dr. Kevich.
Thank you. Let me also appreciate the enormous contribution and the illustrious involvement of Professor Chacha in the transformation of higher education for the benefit of people throughout his involvement as an academic, a scholar, and most importantly now as a leader in the context of higher education. And we indeed are extremely grateful, because for the very essence of that foundation that has been laid by such individuals and such leadership comes initiatives like Aheri. And indeed, I congratulate the organizers of Aheri to bring different stakeholders together to promote the dialogue, because it's only through dialogue that we can promote the necessary meaning, the next phase of transformation. And the next phase of transformation exists within the context of our existing context. And we must realize this from the onset, and this is my first thought, that the reason integration is so important for us is because the most important natural resource we have within 300 million people we have within the East African community is the fact that we have an abundance of diversity. It's a diversity that promotes the necessary innovation to address some of the biggest and most pertinent global challenges that we face, which include everything from climate change, food security, and some of the other kinds of challenges as far as our transition to greater levels of prosperity. And indeed, the theme this year within the context of building partnerships to support innovation in higher education institutions through knowledge, diplomacy, and the specific theme on policy is a true requirement, the catalyst as far as the alignment is concerned, policy. And I think that herein lies how we need to shift our collective East African community educational system to what I would consider would be a way of life for education, as far as the existing context of finding the necessary skills, research, and education for some of the challenges that we face within the context of the customs union, the common market, the monetary union, and ultimately the political federation. And the long and short is that the relevance and the equity and the access to these formidable frameworks of agreement of the East African partner states is on the demand side. It's what would, I believe, answer Professor Chacha's question, what do we need to do to bring it the last mile, to bring it to every single soul within the East African community. And it would then require the reflection and engagement of academics and organized research and skills and education, which are very dedicated to the academic fraternity, look into specific policies which include enhancing trade and investment, for example, the ability to enhance our overall intra-EAC trade from the 17% into %, where the agenda would turn into our favor, development, and reach every single citizen and promote that concentric nature of the African community. But it would also mean that we would look into issues with respect to the accessibility and the relevance of the single customs territory, or the educational requirements and capacities required to enhance our overall standardization programs within the overall commerce architecture of the EAC, and promote the necessary standardization to commerce for the populace of the East African community. It would also mean to reflect that we have the need for research, skills, and education in the core of East African community private sector development strategy, and to see how we're able to bring in aspects of the micro, small, medium enterprise sector in view of the fact that 80% to 90% of businesses in EAC are, after all, micro, small, medium enterprises. So that ability to invent the charter of the MSME to make dedicated frameworks and ecosystems businesses becomes absolutely critical. While we've developed an EAC e-commerce strategy, the need for, once again, academics to find a way in which we roll it out and provide the necessary feedback, improvement, and transition. There's also the need to fully realize the African continental free trade area. While we have agreed on the 1,600 tariff lines, by far, the academics of our time and the relevance to how we're able to implement this becomes an urgent issue, starting from immediately from this moment, and how we are able to bring about that transformation and access of the greater African continental free trade area. This would promote access to another 44 countries, 900 million people, and a $6 trillion opportunity. And so the academics around this is to propel the EAC as a bloc, and thereby create the fourth largest market in the world, after China, India, United States, become the East African community. That huge potential as far as traction of growth. There's also the need for academics within the current context of what we've achieved as far as common external tariff. What espouses East Africa's partner state collective vision from independence from the colonial times was, one particular element of industrialization, and it made common sense then. It makes common sense now because you need to add value in order to have a return value proposition for energy. But the most important, jobs, opportunities within our shores. And so, how do we translate academics to this opportunity and thereby promote that necessary relevance and partnership to support innovation and relevance as far as the current context is concerned? It's also the realization that diplomacy plays a role in COMESA, EAC, and SADC. After all, we are inclusive because it's through inclusivity that we promote resilience and self-reliance and development. The need for academics to play a much larger role within that context of education to also create the framework of the blocks. Some of the challenges that we face on a regular basis, NTBs, these are all the responsibility factors of activity in academia. Tariff barriers equate into challenges within the market system and the need for research in order to better align, better capacitate. I think that, if we focus on issues of commerce, this would be the foundation. There's also the other areas as far as the industrialization policy strategy. What is core to our industrial strategy is that ability to promote value addition. And I mean value addition, take iron ore from one of our partner states, process it, promote science, technology, innovation. And that same iron ore multiplies its value as you use it in more complex projects, like, for example, an aeroplane or a lift. And how do we get that transition? This is a survey of academics. But it's also our focus today as EAC to focus on the iron ore and mineral processing, as well as fertilizers, pharmaceutical industries, petrochemical industries, agro-processing, energy and biofuels. These are priority areas, and therefore will support the necessary traction and investment in academia in order to provide the necessary solutions. There's also the aspects with respect to regional peace and security. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, business and commerce cannot work efficiently on its own. It requires security, it requires peace, it requires the ability to address various protocols for operations and defense. But all of this relates to academic work, including the ability to negotiate mutual defense pacts, joint surveillance, systems, industrial facilities. All this policy work is essential in this context of discussion today. How do we hinge the ESC's fabric in order to really create the next traction for academics and its relevance, its access throughout the entire region? There's also the very important role of regional connectivity. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't stress enough, it's all about connectivity. And today, our challenge, our inclusive challenge of the East African community is to keep reducing the cost of connectivity from where it used to stand at $3 a kilometer, and now where we are challenged at $2 a kilometer, to now our cooperation with academia to achieve $1 a kilometer. When that happens, you know, I assure you that we will transform the entire country, region's prosperity. Because, you know, you can imagine a farmer in the hinterland be able to provide easy access and equitable access to one of the largest markets, you know, and options for that market. And so the entire framework and capacity of the EAC will transform. And so academics is required there. It's required from a context of demand. You know, we are challenging ourselves now, ensure that we get to $1 per kilometer. And indeed, that would mean tremendous research skills and education for our internet and transport system. There's also the need for us to focus on railways and technologies systems, leverage their capabilities to scale, speed, synergy. There's also the need to promote big ideas around civil aviation, the Open Skies Agreement. How do we realize that capacity as far as policies that exist as far as security and oversight, Open Skies Agreements, the ability to promote integrated civil aviation regulations? All of these policies and frameworks exist, but they need to attach to existing capacities within higher education, research, ability. The need for inclusive communication, the ability to promote the structures and their necessary frameworks as far as policies. And together with energy, and yet another very important pillar, the access and equity of energy, how the pool of the African community network pool master plan provides that capacity on paper. But how do we now work towards ensuring that it's highly inclusive and to the benefit as far as cost is concerned? Incredible natural resources we have, which harbor some 20 to 30 million people, like the Lake Victoria Basin, and the enormous ecosystem around Lake Victoria is concerned. How the ability to translate that into prosperity around the lake, but ensure that it promotes greater levels of inclusive development. On the social side, we've seen that several centers of excellence and supported by policy frameworks have been established as far as healthcare. In Kenya, we have the Kidney Center of Excellence. Rwanda has another center of excellence in health and so on. And it's that integrated framework that transitions to a high level of excellence that result in necessary capacity to address formidable health challenges that are emerging from our context that becomes relevant, and how we're able to afford in those specialized areas. You know, affordability. And no one in the rest of the world is going to solve that. It depends on us. You know, how are we going to combine research to achieve success? In education too, the need to create pathways so that, you know, we'll be integrated. Eternity, the need to transition, create pathways from artisan craftsmen, master craftsmen, technicians, technologists, scientists, doctors, and so on. But that ability to move around and to ensure that recognition exists, so that, you know, Africans are recognized through merit. We profoundly use that as far as they promote great integration and support their future security and livelihood is concerned. And so some of these challenges and policy frameworks exist as far as our overall development. Mine was to share the entire picture of the EAC with a view of stimulating academics and so on as a pathway into this next generation in terms of what we are going to do collectively. I thank you very much and indeed look forward to the presentation today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kevit. I'll request that you stay online. Certain the audience has some questions for you and very interesting perspectives that you have shared with us. And I'm sure there's much more we can be able to glean from the feedback or the response that you've given us. Next, I will move to Dr. Edna from the Nelson Mandela Institute. And it's amazing to see the work that you are doing at the Institute here in Arusha. And from the conversation we had yesterday, I'm just thinking back, and you indicated that there are similar centers of excellence in other parts of the continent. And it's interesting that it sits close to the headquarters of our regional economic community, our REC, the East African Community, and which makes me think about the policy and governance frameworks that are key enablers for such centers of excellence. As of interesting to me is the fact that it is publicly supported, but in other regions, we also have privately supported ones. And our previous speaker from the East African business community indicated the fact that previously the East African community probably collapsed because of lack of participation of the private sector. So from your experience at the Nelson Mandela Center, I wonder what are some of these key enabling policy and regulatory frameworks that are necessary in ensuring that such wonderful centers of excellence are able to thrive and they are able to meet the objectives for which they have been established. And I raise this question considering the fact that there's been a mushrooming of universities, technical and vocational institutions and the likes, and the question of sustainability is coming into the fore. And I think people are asking, did we slide somewhere or did we make the wrong decision somewhere? I'm sure Professor Chacha and Dr. Kevit will also come in later on to weigh in on this. But what's your take on the same?
Yeah, thank you, Barak, and yeah, thank you the previous presenters, and yeah, appreciating the lesson that we learned all about the higher learning journey in the East Africa and the policies and frameworks around it. Now this take us back in our context, take us back and in 2001, where there was a head of state meeting and the late Nelson Mandela was there. And they all appreciate all the academic journey. However, there was still a knowledge deficit in Africa, and African couldn't solve their problems. Instead of, there were a lot of educated African, or quite a number of educated, but they could not solve their problem. And this brings in the establishment of our Nelson Mandela, because in that particular meeting, the World Bank president was there and took up the idea and pushed it further until now we see the Nelson Mandela that we are seeing, and inside of it there are centers of excellence that we're talking about. Coming back, why there was establishment of our institution. So from the same particular meeting I'm talking about, Nelson Mandela felt that we should focus on science, technology, innovation, trying to solve our problems. And later on, we realized that also innovation is the key. And now having the Center of Excellence in the Nelson Mandela, which supports in the 3 schools that we have, the schools of life science and bioengineering, where the Center of Excellence, the creates, that is focused on food and nutrition sits there. We also have the second Center of Excellence that is on, this called Wise Futures, this is water and energy. This is on the schools of material, engineering, science, and environment. And we also have the third Center of Excellence. This is the Sanity. And this sits at the School of Computation, Science, and Engineering. So altogether, our focus was to see, and like we are not moving in the normal like ways of teaching, and trying to create products that will not seek for the employment as the previous universities thinking was. Like the graduates were moving from the universities and thinking of the employment. So in having the 3 centers of excellence and also working together with the collaboration of the schools, and also we have another school that is on business studies that keeps on pushing and training scientists, because when the scientist is on science, then a component on business is forgotten. So this particular school brings in the knowledge of business and the knowledge of entrepreneurship. In that regard, as we are focusing on the graduates that are trained and getting skills on how to innovate in every research they are working on, we emphasize on coming up with innovation. And why innovation? Because we have been seeing and experiencing a big challenge, I can say, of the employability. And the numbers is rising tremendously in East Africa and especially in our country. So we are trying to also creating the job creator and emphasizing on coming up with the innovation, and how we get the innovation out of it. We also emphasize on the community engagement. So we have internships as well in the program, where our student in their second semester for the MSc goes to the community for a couple of months, learning what are the problems around their areas. And when they come back in the program, so they learn on how they try to find solution of the problems that is facing the community. And in that regard, that also bring us close to the community that we are working with, and also the industries around us. And we are not ending up there, because the student has to work and come up with a final dissertation as well as innovation. And we do evaluate if the innovation that emanated from their research work are potential for commercialization, either in a transfer to the community or commercialized. There are those innovations that we can disseminate to the community, and there are those innovations that we patent and see the way to commercialize, either in licensing or as a spin-off. So doing that, we are still at the infant stage in that, but we have been doing great, and we have a good progress. And we have realized that emphasizing innovation and entrepreneurship and incorporating that dose in their study, that brings us the graduate that are not facing challenges in searching for the job, like coming out with the jobs. And those are the frameworks that we have. And I can say in the current the university framework, we should try to think on how we embrace the innovation ecosystem among the institution. I understand we have the ecosystem at the individual national level, but how does it work at the university level? And NMIST has its own innovation ecosystem whereby we consider the centers of excellence that we have and the schools that we have are the producers and steering up the innovation production. And through the School of the Business Studies and Humanities, these innovations are connected to the incubation center that we have at the institution, where we incubate the potential one. We incubate the potential ideas that we steer them up to move forward to the community. And that keeps us connected to the community, but that is the way also the universities, with the current challenges of financial stability, having revenues from the innovation that goes through commercialization and it goes through spin-off, that raise up the sustainability, the financial sustainability of the particular institution. So in concluding that, I can say in all the academic, when we think of the academic, when we think of the research, let us all think on how our research can end up payback to the community and to the individual. How the research, how the academic work can end up engaging the universities or the higher learning institution with the community. Because there are also claims that universities and academic institutions are working in silos. Like universities are doing their work and the industry is doing their work. There is no link up. But how can we link between the two? Then also internships should be emphasized as the academic journey of one, whether it is in the undergraduate level or in the postgraduate level. This linkage should be real strengthened through internships, as in this way we would learn what is happening in the industry and they will learn what is happening in our higher learning institution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Edna, for that insightful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, our clarion call is ideas into action. I'm actually blocking the clarion call here. And I had a chance to visit the institute, and believe you me, I saw instant porridge. I think it will be out here. I'm reminded, I read a wise saying somewhere that we eat first and then we can think about other things in a restaurant where I was. So we'll have a taste of the instant porridge that is here. Local solutions to local problems. I hope we can test it so that we can get the proof of context of the proof of concept here. I know there are many questions on the floor, and I would like to take this opportunity to invite the floor to indulge the panel. They've given us a journey of the higher education system in East Africa. We have had a practical perspective of what needs to be done from Dr. Kevin Desai, who is still online listening to the conversation. And we've also had a practical angle from the Nelson Mandela Institute of Science and Technology on what really needs to be done in the space. So I would like to take this opportunity to invite the audience. I'll give you a minute if you have something to contribute or a question to the panel, which has very ably brought out the issues. And I don't know if for our online audience, which I can also see is growing, there is any question to the panel as well. I won't take much time on this. In the interest of time, do we have any questions or comments from the audience? I see Dr. Mary. Please, you have the floor. Introduce yourself and then you can make your comment.
Okay, thank you. I'm Mary Aswan Ochieng from Aheri, and I really thank the panelists for the insightful conversations that we have had. This is a question that's been put in the chat about the disconnect between what we teach our graduates and what the industry expects. And Dr. Edna, I think you've also spoken to it. You talked about that disconnect between the higher education and industry. And so how do you think we can bridge that disconnect? You've talked about internships, but is there any other way that we can bridge that disconnect so that we ensure that whatever we are teaching our students at the lower levels and even at the undergraduate and postgraduate level meets with the expectations of the industry?
Thank you. Do we have any other question? Maybe I can take 2 or 3 at a go, or intervention. Yes, sir. Please move closer to the mics up front here. We have, for the audience that is listening online, we are also live on TV.
Thank you very much. Yes. Hello? Hello? I'm Julius Tengwena from Mandela, and I'm the university. I know he has been there for so long. If I can look back there, and he has seen a lot. The transformation of we have been experiencing the gap that is spoken here for the island in the private sector, especially in the question of supporting research and innovation. According to Nelson Mandela, we had also that had an idea of having more scientists in Africa so that we solve our own problems. Now, Professor Chacha, what has been the problem of Africa to grow to the next level as it is to other continents like Europe and Asia? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other question? I can take a third one and then invite the audience to respond. In the interest of time, I think I will close that. Yes, Dr. Pandey. Dr. Pandey is over there. You can check if the mic on the desk is working.
Thank you, Dr. Edna. I think I'm a bit excited to hear that you have got an incubation center where you are trying to nurture the students to be self-reliant. Now, my question is, at what point do you release your students? When do you consider them to be self-reliant, that you are now able to release them to do their own things? I believe that you are talking about issues of patenting and registration of some of these innovative ideas. But then now, when do you do the evaluation to consider them now self-reliant, that you can now release them into the market? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we will take that round of questions. I'll start with Dr. Edna, then Professor Chacha, and then I will have Dr. Kevit as well. In the interest of time, as you answer, you can also, or I'll come back for a closing round of remarks for each of the panelists. So just respond to.
Yeah, let me start with the last one. Having an incubation center, and when do we consider our students reliant? When do we release them? There are 2 ways on how we release them, because positive research, and when we already see there is a invention out of the research, we evaluate the invention and see at which level the invention is. Is it still need to be perfected? Is it strong enough that it can go through the patenting or copywriting and then further move to the market? does it still need to be incubated to check and also to test its technical viability? And in this regard, then, one can exit immediately after the research when the innovation or the invention that prove it can straight goes to the market, or it can straight goes to a dissemination. And if the innovation is still at, like we see it is potential, yes, but it still need to be perfected to meet a certain quality that it can now allow it to go to the market. Then it can either return to further research so that it can come out as the competent one, or it can move to be incubated. And we incubate them since their innovation, our incubation is innovation-based incubation center. So we incubate them a maximum for 3 years. And during the incubation, we test or we also test the commercial proof of concept, technical proof of concept, and we train also the inventor on all the business skills, the marketing issues, the branding, business models, and all the stuff. So after that, depending on the speed or on the type of the innovation, that can take maximum of 3. So giving an example of one of the invention that we have, which didn't stay at the incubation, is the anti-plagiarism invention. This was invented by one of our MSc in computation school, and post his research, we discovered that it's perfect enough to start the testing aspect, the market testing, and currently is on the market testing, and maybe in the next few months, you may be hearing from us that we have an equally like anti-plagiarism that is equal with the equal quality like the Turnitins and so. Thank you. So going to the second question, how are we connecting the industry and academia? Yes, there are several ways that we can connect. And in this regard, in the previous, we had an experiencing of internships post-graduation. And you realize that you have trained a student who doesn't match the market demand. So when they go to the internship, they start learning the skills that are required by the employers, that are required by the job markets. And to a point, this is an embarrassing situation to most of the employers. We had a dialogue in the last 2 weeks, the academia sparks, where the two mates, the private, the employers, and the academia. So this was a real frustration to the industry and private, the employers, I can say. Because when they receive the student, they know nothing about the industry. They know nothing about what is happening in the market. But engaging the internship program in between the program before the students is graduated, give him skills give him or her skills of what is happening real in the industry. And this can also be like an eye-opener to exactly how the learning should be, how what is expecting there can be real accommodated before the students or is graduating. And another way of engaging a industry and academia is by partnership. There are points that I'm sure we will reach whereby the industries will not seek for the assistance somewhere else in Europe or somewhere, because if we engage them, then they will know better what we are doing. We have state-of-art laboratories in some of our universities, but do the industries knows? Do the industry know that if they have a certain challenge they can take and it can be solved within a particular institution? So that is one thing. And also publicizing our work. We have been publishing a lot, trying to acquire the academic points for our promotions. But do the community around us knows what we have in our portfolio? And if we publish in a layman language that we have this and this, we can offer this and this, possibly that will strengthen our collaboration with the industry.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I had one question that was directed to me, and I would like to address it before I make a statement that perhaps can save time as a final statement. The other parts of the world, what have they done better than us in terms of the engagement between what happens in the universities or in the institutions of learning and the industry and the consumers of the products of these institutions? I think the recommended perspective in terms of operation is that we should encourage our institutions, even when we are developing the curriculum, to start interacting with the intended consumers of the individuals who will go through that curriculum. So that at the end of the day, you can then, if you are going to be institutionalizing a program in environmental science or in civil engineering, you can have engaged in the industry where these people who will graduate from this degree program will end up seeking employment and engagement so that they are able to interact with us and interrogate our curriculum development to be able to say, although this is a standard way of how engineers are trained in the university, situation on the ground, as far as the current practice in the industry is concerned, have changed, and we may have to adopt or change some perspectives in the curriculum in order for these people who will be pursuing degrees in this area to be relevant when they are seeking employment in our place. I think that is now currently being practiced in other parts of the world. And since we are still traditional, using our own traditional mechanism of thinking that when we are in the university, we are different from people who are going to consume our students, we have not dared to invite some of these people. Some of them are knowledgeable because some industrial plants and organizations have employed engineers. They have employed people who are already scholarly people who have masters, some even PhD. So we should not shy away from engaging them in discussing our curriculum development and eventually even testing the process of how we teaching. In some countries like the European countries, the German, Netherlands, and whatever, they even invite people of that nature to come and they give guest lectures to the students who are learning in that area of their specialization. So it's important for us to do that. But the bottom line, if I may again throw some spanner in the works, our problem is really money. You see, these developed countries, Australia, America, Germany, UK, whatever is being done by the universities in terms of what they are doing in the workshops, they are doing in the laboratories, they are doing in their research fields, is well funded so that people are patient enough, they can put their resources there and wait for that student or the learners with the supervisors to come out with the innovations. But I think as far as we are concerned, we think that we will just get it by inviting industry to participate in our activities. The industry here is not mature enough. It is not well endowed with the resources. And even those who are well endowed with the resources, we don't have that culture. So the starting point is to develop the culture of relationship between educational institutions, universities, institutions of higher learning with industry. Let's develop an amicable working relationship. Let's discuss together. Let's explore the possibilities of how funding can be acquired from the industry, from the private sector, as well as from government. A lot of money from government, for example, government of America, UK government, German government is plowed to universities to undertake research for the benefit of humanity, for the benefit of uplifting the economic growth and the standards of that particular country, so that institutions then are seen as partners by the government, and some of the money from the government is channeled through the universities and the other institutions to conduct the research that will unveil results that will be beneficial to the entire economy and the humanity. Now, the last point, which I would like to end up with. Most times Africans, when we talk, we are talking about science, science, science. We talk about STEM. Every day, you have had statements from very many people, including heads of states, that sometimes humanities and arts, social sciences should even be discarded. Some programs should be thrown out. The developed world, which we always admire, have invested a lot of their resources to run a complete system of higher education, where all these areas of engagement, you recall, the mother of science was language and the philosophy. If you read it, Socrates, Plato, and all of those Aristotle people, they were always talking about scientific things, but telling you that you must also play music, telling you that you must also engage in debate, telling you that you must also write plays and attend performances of actors and actresses. Now, our education system in Africa has ignored that, and that is one of the dangers that we face, because we think by putting people in laboratories and telling them, you do biology, do chemistry, do physics, do mathematics and engineering, we shall grow. We will not grow unless we also appreciate that the Nelson Mandela University requires dramatists, so that when people have gone to those workshops and are tired, they can also be entertained by a play written by somebody who is teaching literature. It is important for you to remember that the highest institution of technology in America is MIT. It is always number one in the ranking of university education. If it's not number one, they change number one with Harvard, which both of them are in Boston area. And you know, MIT, many people do not know that it teaches philosophy, it teaches literature, it teaches linguistics. In fact, the best linguist, Noam Chomsky, has been a professor at MIT since his childhood education engagement. He's now perhaps retired or dead, I don't know. I haven't Googled him. But some of us here, we tend to think that if we always glorify science, we will uplift our economy and we will grow. Now you must also say, let's create a platform for poets to compose their poetry, so that that poetry can engage us and the networkers with the industry. Thank you very much. I don't have to come back.
Thank you very much, Prof. Yeah, very interesting. I understand nowadays for the cows that produce milk, they listen to jazz music. Yeah, so Prof is really on point. Dr. Kevich, as I come to you, and then I'll have concluding remarks. Apologies, the panel has taken long, but it has been very insightful and very interesting. There's a question for you. We are talking about intellectual property and patenting, but is there room for Creative Commons licensing to ensure free exchange on knowledge and ideas? That's from Dr. Mary Aswan. Dr. Kevit, if you may respond to that, and then you can also address any other issue that has caught your attention.
Indeed, there are national policies with respect to intellectual property rights in each respective country, and I believe that it is something that could be harmonized within the context of EAC, because we already have harmonized ecosystem as far as standards and other key elements are concerned. So this is an ongoing effort within the context of your leadership and the possibility that Aheri can take a look into this and promote the necessary benefit to researchers like yourself. Now, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, indeed, this issue, I'd like to focus on one issue, and that is the relevance and quality of research skills and education, and this, this imagination that we have held to date with respect to a link between industry and academia. But I'd like you to consider now a totally different approach, which I feel would be the solution. And indeed, we're here gathered under Aheri, which plays such a significant role, an invaluable role of leadership. And I think that one of the first steps we need to do is commit and support initiatives, because they play that transformative role of promoting dialogue amongst different stakeholders. So my view with respect to promoting links between industry and academia for the achievement and outcome of quality, relevance, research skills in education leads you to consider the fact that this is something that we've always wished for, this model. And while this model has worked in other countries, it may not necessarily work in the East African community. We need to be open to the fact that we cannot depend on altruism and goodwill. We need to appreciate the incredible value that each of our universities in East Africa have by way of their professors and academics who have exceptional skills as far as organized research, education, training. So what I'm trying to get at is that rather than consistently, and like what we have done in the past, focus on creating links between ourselves and industry, or for that matter, the public sector. Let me give you an example. For example, the policy on food security action plan of the EAC. Does it mean that academic institutions will work directly with such institutions? Or could it be possible that we work directly with, in the case of the private sector, the market? Until and unless we don't work with the market, which ensures that if in the case that you're talking about an industry that is producing, for example, a bicycle, until we don't work with the market and fully utilize and include policy issues of policy research and education and skills on policies, legislations, regulations, and standards for that bicycle market, as well as all other aspects, infrastructure, coordination capacities. As long as we don't look at this from a systemic perspective, as far as the market is concerned, we won't be able to produce another option of engagement as far as a value proposition for industry is concerned. So rather than sort of try to join industry and private sector, what I'm simply saying is that, we go and extend ourselves directly to the market of that bicycle and understand the market through all the research capacities we have, the capabilities we have and skills, and so on. Then sell the value proposition back to the industry. In the case of the public sector, the ability to understand the policy and its implications as far as implementation is concerned. In the context of the EAC Food Security Action Plan, for example, look into all issues on the ground as far as policy issues for of such a policy, standards, issues of legislation, issues of regulation, issues of lack of infrastructure, issues of coordination, issues of innovation, and sell it back to the public sector within the context of the value proposition for us, public sector, to implement. And I think that this could be a new approach. This is something that Aheri could champion, and this, I'm certain, will set the stage, together with what the previous speakers have said, all the different other ideas. This could then catalyze the overall linkage and stimulate an awareness, an understanding, and appreciation both the public sector and the industry sector as to why, they can only become more productive, innovative, efficient if they're linked to research, skills, and education. So I think that, we need to demonstrate in other ways and create that awareness. And I do believe that we have all the hope, because the platform that has been left, it does not stop us from achieving great levels of success. And I close by thanking Aheri once again, and compelling all stakeholders, both online as well as physical in Arusha, to really support such initiative. Leadership is the foundation of transformation, and what we are witnessing today is leadership. And sometimes we take it for granted. We shouldn't take it for granted. I think that, after this event, we should do something about things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kevit. And I think I want to conclude with your last comment on the role of leadership as a foundation to the work that we are doing, whether it's in innovation or development of the higher education system on the African continent. I think you have summarized it really well. And in the interest of time, I know the panel has been very interesting. I would wish to bring it to a close. And I want to start by thanking you, Dr. Kevit, for your interventions remotely. We hope that you will stay on to listen on to the other interventions and papers that are coming up. Also to thank you, Dr. Edna, for your wonderful intervention, as well as Professor Chacha. The audience or the panelists will remain with us. As you can see, they are very passionate about the higher education system within the African region and beyond, and they are also very knowledgeable and resourceful. So I believe that this is just a beginning of a conversation, and of course Aheri is a platform, so we need to carry on with this conversation beyond this room and beyond this panel. So I'll invite you to do so. As we conclude, I invite you to give a round of applause to the panel for the justice they have done on the topic. I know there are a few online questions which we have not addressed, but we'll address on subsequent panels. And I'll invite the photographer for the panelist photo. And then I request you, we will have a group photo outside as we grab a cup of program. Thank you very much for your active participation. For those who are online, stay tuned as well. Thank you very much for keeping the online room live as well. With that, we take a tea break and also a photo session, and then we'll resume in the next 20 minutes. Thank you, everyone. The photographers, we can take a panel photo here. Ushers, kindly guide us.
The perfect lamp for you. This gadget doesn't just look mesmerizing to the eye, but it also levitates, making it that much cooler. The best part is that the moon lamp wirelessly charges while it's levitating, so you don't have to keep a plain disc on your table while it's charging. Inside the moon, there are LED lights that can change from a gradient of warm yellow to white automatically. Designers of this gadget have accurately marked each crater of the moon. Number 11. Mesmoglobe. Some days are just plain boring. You don't have any work to do and the day doesn't seem to move on. So to give your day some dynamic and movements, here's the visual illusion ball that spins as the spiral on it looks like it constantly moves. However, in reality, it's all just an illusion, but your brain doesn't know that. It's made of high-quality materials that let it spin silently for a few minutes. Not only will you be able to look at it for hours, but it also won't make any clicking or tapping noises that could potentially disturb anyone around you. Number 10. Newton's Cradle. In a list of motion gadgets, we can't forget the age-old Newton's Cradle. It's a classic for a reason. It looks good in every environment and has a simple yet fascinating momentum. Moreover, if you're a teacher, it can double as a physics aid to help your students understand what Newton laws are about. This specific one is made of durable stainless steel and has an amazing reflective surface on the balls. Magnetic Decision Maker. The 8-ball Decision Maker is out of the game. There's a better and much cooler version of it. With just a ball hanging from a string, you can decide if you should do that pending assignment today or later. Just move the little ball and it'll stop above and answers, which include maybe, definitely, no way, try again, and ask a friend. The best part is, you'll never have to worry about breaking it like an 8-ball, since it's literally made of steel. Number 8. Kinetic Galaxy. This gadget is particularly loved by space fanatics who can't get enough of outer space. The Kinetic Galaxy desk toy isn't just beautiful when it moves. It has a holographic color shifting effect on the rings that looks mesmerizing even when it's still. Just spin the cone and watch the amazing metallic orbits move about in intricate ways. Moreover, you get to build this gadget by yourself like a Lego project. Don't worry, the instructions or in your kid's room if he or she is into astronomy or science. Number 7. The Flux. Many gadgets need batteries or electricity to continue being incredibly attention-grabbing. The Flux is also fun to play with. It's basically a solid piece of metal with a super strong magnetic ball that creates an unusual anti-gravity effect on any surface. Once you drop the metal ball into the copper tube, you can watch it descend down as if it's happening in slow motion. It'll pop out of the end without even touching the tube in a tiny bit. It's totally a conversation starter, a stress reliever, and a fidget toy all wrapped in one.